It's good to see a lot of familiar faces here. So for those who don't know me, I'm Sanjay Khandelwal. I know you don't know me, Neil. I'm the president of Loma Prieta Community Foundation and also the moderator for 95033 Talk, for people who know that. Let me do a couple of very basic things, and then we'll announce ourselves and everything. The way we're going to do it is Susan and I will go back and forth, each one asking a question. We're just going to give it to one of the candidates. One answers, other one gets to answer. If you say, hey, I agree with the other one, that's fine. You don't have to answer it. Hopefully we have enough questions. We start running out, we will close it. Okay, so that's just the basics. We're not going to make everyone stay here for the whole time if we don't need to. Okay, so let me hand it to Susan. Why don't you introduce yourself and the Loma Prieta Club, and then.
Okay. My name is Susan Zerwick. I know so many of you here, and I am a member of the Loma Prieta Club. And would everybody in Loma Prieta Club raise your hand? Good. Loma Prieta Club was started in 1906 by a group of ladies who wanted not only to get together socially. Can you turn this down a bit? I've got an awful lot of echo. Thank you. Anyway, they also wanted to do something for the community. So anyway, the club has continued through all these years. Many of you have been to our picnic, which is going to happen again in May, and we raise money and we give it away to the community needs. We're very proud of that. Last year we gave away $16,000 to the community. We give 2 scholarships to mountain kids graduating from Los Gatos High School. And so anyway, I'm very, very proud of our club. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. All right, so I think I've got to do this. Talk about Loma Prieta Community Foundation. So LPCF is a 501c3 nonprofit volunteer organization dedicated to building and supporting a strong sense of community in the mountains. That's what we try and do. So LPCF also is responsible for Theater in the Mountains, for Building Blocks preschool across the street. We also sponsor a bunch of different organizations, including the Loma Prieta Museum, 95033, a bunch of different organizations. And then my other hat is 95033 Talk, which is an online group for folks to yak about whatever the heck they want to talk about. We've got about 2,600 members. And you can find more info at either www.lpcf.org about LPCF or www.95033talk.com about talk. Okay? So, again, getting down to what we're doing today, this is literally a Meet the Candidates night. You know, we're thankful for both Manu Koenig and Lani Faulkner for joining us, and it is a privilege to have them up here on the mountain. We're a small community up here, so thank you for coming up. This is not a debate. This is literally our chance to get to know them and to ask about local questions that we have. I mean, as I've talked to lots of people up here, there are questions we have, things we care about that are different than if you live in town, right? If you live in the flatlands. And this is our chance. So March 5th is the election. I did not know that till about 3 weeks ago. I'm thinking it's in November. No, this is really on March the 5th, because the way the supervisors' elections work is March 5th, you have the election, anyone gets 51%, you're done. No one gets 51%, runoff, top 2 in November. So District 5, which is on the other side of 17, so that's Bruce McPherson's district for people who may live there, or District 5 for Santa Clara, that's just on the other side of Summit Road. That also, so each of them has 5 candidates, decent chance they'll go to a runoff. So March 5th election, November election. We've got 2. Chances are pretty much someone's gonna get 50% plus 1. So this is our election. So this is our chance to know the candidates, okay? So that's just the basics, why we're doing this now. People have asked me about whether Loma Prieta Club and LPCF will do another one for District 5 or Santa Clara. When there is a runoff, we will likely do one. I didn't want to do it for 5 candidates, but we'll do it for 2. It's a lot of work to put together, folks. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it to, I have no idea which one of you wants to go. Yeah, you want to do Rochambeau or something? We'll do a 90-minute introduction, if each of you could.
I think we had
90 seconds.
two-
Oh my God, not 90 minutes.
I'm out of here. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm out of here too.
We're leaving.
90-second
I had
introduction.
2 minute.
2 minutes,
intro
sure,
and
go 2
90
minutes.
outro is what-
Go for it.
Okay.
2 minutes.
How about ladies first?
Ladies first, there you go.
Thank you all for coming. I think this is a really important time that we get involved in our politics, so thanks for being here. My name is Lani Faulkner. I'm a scientist, a mom, a wilderness first responder, and founder of the organization Equity Transit. I have 3 science degrees, including a master's degree in human physiology, and I've lived in the county for 27 years, and including rural Happy Valley, Boulder Creek, and in Live Oak for 16 years. I've worked in environmental education with the State Department of Education, and I've worked nationally and internationally in the medical field, collaborating across agencies and functions, bringing people together to work on multi-million-dollar projects, roles similar to that of county supervisor. I've spent the last several years working as a stakeholder with a number of local agencies, including the Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience in Disaster Preparedness, the Community Traffic Safety Coalition on Safer Streets, and with Metro working on 15-minute bus service on major transit corridors. I've worked on the housing element. I provided letters of support for county grants that have helped bring in tens of millions of dollars for the county. And I also have worked with the San Lorenzo Valley Women's Club of San Lorenzo Valley, yes, that's how it's said, on key projects around fire and PG&E. I also serve as a Democratic state delegate, and I'm on the state rural caucus advocating for issues that are specific to our rural community members. I've been asked to run by senior leadership in our community who were shocked when the first thing the incumbent did in 2021 was to fire 2 senior women off of their commission to replace them with 2 male friends, rather than respectfully allowing them to finish their term. I've been asked to run and endorsed by school board members, from the Live Oak, Soquel, Happy Valley, Mountain School, and Santa Cruz City schools, teachers, seniors, union members, and many others that have shared their voices have not been heard and their needs have not been met. I've been endorsed by 22 major organizations, including 10 major unions, firefighters and fire board members, small business owners, and local and state leaders have endorsed me, including Sam Farr, Bill Monning, Mark Stone, and many others just like you. Thank you so much.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you to the Loma Prieta Community Foundation and Loma Prieta Club for hosting this debate. It's always good to have these substantive opportunities to get into the issues and to get to know us. My name is Manu Koenig. I have had the pleasure of being your supervisor for the last few years. I was actually born and raised up here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, just a little bit down Highland on the Corralita side. My parents still live out there, so one of my chores growing up was chopping wood. Our snow days were when the road slid out and we got to stay home for a little while. And I still have the muscle memory when I go up to see my parents of how to avoid every single pothole in the road. So I know your issues are my issues. They still are by way of my parents and grandparents as well. I'm also a cyclist, so I regularly get out here and see the roads firsthand. I'm looking down at them and see the condition of the roads, and also have an opportunity to go out and look at all the new projects that are going in, mostly repairs, of course. So over the last few years, I've really tried to, rural issues have always been at the top of my minds. First of all, communications, right? You guys asked me to make sure to maintain a regular meeting up here. I was actually up here just last week with the Sheriff's Office. We're talking about public safety and how to address speeding issues, as well as making sure everyone's notified whenever there's a rash of car break-ins or something like that. We got the ghost car out here, so that was a good step. Also, we're getting the joint substation up here with the Santa Clara Sheriff's Office as well as our Sheriff's Office, so using the fact that we're right on a border here as an advantage rather than a weakness. On fire, one of the first things I did was almost double the number of fire cameras we have out here for an early warning system. So we got one up at Gerald's Place at Silver Mountain Winery. Also got 2 more down in town looking up at the mountains for a total of 7 now. Also, with my first year, I took really all the discretionary funding I had in District 1 and I gave it to the Fire Safe Council. They used that money to go out and win $1.5 million worth of state grants, and have used that both on local vegetation management projects as well as to take the Firewise communities from 10 to 56 now. So that's been great. And then I've been a consistent advocate for county roads. I know it's not enough, and we need to do more, but in the last couple of rounds of allocating gas tax money, I was a strong advocate for making sure county roads got their fair share, and we allocated them more than we ever have in previous rounds of funding. So I look forward to your questions.
There are cards in the back, and if the Loma Prieta Club maybe member could pass them around and then bring them up to us, if you have questions, you do need to put them on a card and bring them up to Sanjay and myself, please. So anyway.
Yeah, we've got about 10 questions here, so good enough to get started. All right, so I'm going to start with a easy one. I hope it's easy. So can each of you please tell us, A, what area in the county you live in with your family right now, and B, tell us about your family and your hobbies.
Lani.
Go ahead, Lani.
Okay, sure. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So I live right now in the heart of Live Oak. I mentioned earlier I lived for about 8 years in Boulder Creek. I've lived in Happy Valley. But I also grew up in rural California, so fire is a huge concern and something that I'm very aware of. As far as my hobbies and my family, I'm what I call an urban gardener now, or urban farmer. I actually grew up as a farm girl. Basically, I had my own vineyard as a high school student, and I raised livestock. So I'm very much in tune with nature, and that's just really important to me. I actually would probably live in south-facing county. If I could have about 5 acres, that would be my dream, so that I could be farming again. The other thing is I was trained as a classically trained opera singer, so I have a background in music, and I spent many years singing. I haven't sung for a long time seriously, so don't ask me to sing. Although I did sing the national anthem for the parade on Pleasure Point this year, which was really fun for the 4th of July. There's just a lot of things I love to do, and most of them are hands-on and just getting out in nature. I'm a triathlete, so I was trained. I actually haven't been triathloning in a while because I'm running for office, but I used to do triathlons and marathons, and so to me, the same kind of training that goes into that kind of activity is very much like running for office. I say that this is sprinting a marathon, and you just have to have that kind of momentum. I do a lot of things, so those are some of the main ones. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I live down near the harbor, and I have, with my wife, my 9-month-old baby daughter, and our blue healer, who has a lot of energy. So pretty much in my free time, I'm just trying to get the family outside to explore and make sure that everyone gets their yayas out. So we do a lot of hiking, love the Chaminade trails, we'll go out to my parents in Corralitos, hike around there, or in Nicene Marks or at the Demo Forest. And I also love gardening. I have a lot of houseplants that I tend to. So I could wax poetic about all my wonderful pursuits, but I think we should get on to some other substantive questions.
All right, thanks.
I just want to add, actually, I coached mountain biking, youth mountain biking for 7 years. So.
Very cool.
All right. My first question is, okay, no. Lani, you have many great ideas for making our district in Santa Cruz County better, but how do you plan on dealing with the Santa Cruz government bureaucracy?
I think that's a really great question, and it really differentiates my kind of leadership and why I'm very successful in my past leadership, and that is I'm very much a boots on the ground, roll up my sleeves, get into the community, work with the community. And the first thing that I would do is actually when I work with different departments is that I would ask questions rather than tell people what I want to hear. I think asking questions starts to bubble up the relationships that we need with our community members and those people who are helping to work for the county, so that we hear what the problems are. And I think that there's a difference between when you lead from the top down, which is what I've heard is the current leadership in our county with our supervisor, and the kind of leadership that I bring, which is more partnering and collaborating. And I hope I fully answered that question. Bureaucracy,
Excellent.
yeah, from the inside.
Manu, since you have had several years of experience dealing with the bureaucracy, can I have some of your ideas?
Sure. I think it's the money. No, seriously, because I've spent a lot of time trying to work on improving our planning process, and it's great to introduce a new program, but of course that takes staff time, takes hours to get through the process of setting it up, and ultimately, if the funding isn't there to truly support it, then it's not going to be an effective solution. So at the end of the day, we just need to fund what we want more and what we don't want less, and find new and creative ways to get more funding. And I know I should probably just sit here politely, and we're not debating, but you mentioned my opponent has so many ideas. I actually couldn't name one. I mean, if you go to her website, she mentions priorities, but not substantive ideas. And I would actually love to hear one substantive idea for how we improve the mountain area.
Absolutely. Again, I think that gets back to partnership. One of the ideas I think is really important, for example, I've worked with the San Lorenzo Valley, women of San Lorenzo Valley, and I just realized they are, I don't know if you know them or you work with them, but they are a very potent group of women. They work directly with John Laird, with Gail Pellerin, and they really help to change a lot of legislation. They work on the PG&E issues and the fire issues. And what I would say is one of the first things is to bring together that partnership with our women leaders here, and I apologize, the name of the group went in and out, but you have an important leadership group made up of women here, and when you bring partnerships and collaborations and coalitions together, you just grow that power that we have, and I think that that's a real key one that comes to mind right off the bat. So I would really help to grow those kinds of partnerships across this area, in this rural area.
Thank you.
Right, so not an idea, just some more name dropping.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I can give you some more ideas. I mean, I think we've got some amazing technology in the fire world right now. I talked to a gentleman named Stephen Harrington. He's pretty amazing. He works in the Fire Safe Council. And some of the technology that's coming across, for example, is early detection. But I actually want to step back a step further, and that talks about PG&E. PG&E is a huge igniter of fires. And if we want to do fire prevention, the first thing if we want to prevent forest fires in our entire region, we actually want to go to the cause, preventing fires in the first place. So let's talk to PG&E. About 2 years ago, I worked with the San Lorenzo Valley Women Club that I talked about, and I helped to introduce what's called the franchise agreement to all the supervisors, and the current supervisor in our district is one of those individuals. Well, that franchise agreement was written up in 1955, and it's never been revisited. And there are a number of key things that could change. We have the ability, these supervisors have the direct ability and responsibility to change that franchise agreement, and they have not done so. We have brought it to their attention. It has not been done yet, and there's some key things that they could do. For example, undergrounding power wires is not the best thing for our rural environments. It's expensive, it's very difficult to upkeep. But when you do something as simple as doing triple insulation at the top of those wires, it's cheaper, it's more effective, and it's incredibly safe. So if we work and rechange the franchise agreement, and that would be one of the first things that I look at in protecting our mountain areas, we could do a lot in a very short period of time with very little money with PG&E. And I just want to point out that Southern California Edison has done all of that. In addition to that, they've added top-level technology that allows them to immediately shut off powers in these areas, and they've had no more fires since this time. So that's just one little example of what I would want to work on.
Thank you. Manu, do you want to respond?
Sure. Well, I do appreciate the detail. Thank you. I do remember receiving that proposal from from the entire Valley Women's Club. And of course, one of the big challenges we've had here is with that new technology that turns off the power when a squirrel jumps on the line. So I think we do have it here, but we'd be happy to look at other opportunities to invest more specifically in the most cost-efficient way to keep our lights on. I think, at the end of the day, again, it comes down to more money, and so I'm going to look at substantive programs that we can cut in the budget, which unfortunately I think, whether it's looking at the CAO's office, county administrative office, or other parts that we need to cut to make sure that we are putting the money we need to, particularly into culverts, right? I mean, all our roads need more money, but particularly water management, because we've seen up here recently that when we don't take care of the water, the roads go real fast.
May I respond?
No.
No, you guys are going to keep going.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
Y'all could talk to me personally later.
So just with all due respect, this is stuff we care about, not what you care about. So with all due respect.
Absolutely.
It's really supposed to be 90 seconds per answer, but those were very
That's
good.
fine.
We
It's
appreciate
good to get those, but yeah, I would like to get to things we care about. So,
Yes.
Yeah, great. I mean, somebody had actually texted me earlier saying, you got to do a WWE style thing, and maybe we should, but I think this would be better. All right. The question I have, the next one is, it's a subject that people are not thinking about right now because it's winter, but it's about fire. We're all in CSA 48 and served by county fire and a volunteer fire company, right? Loma Prieta Volunteer Fire and Rescue, that's what we're all served by. So the question I have, and Manu will start with you on this one, and then Lani will go to you, is, so how familiar are you with the subject of, how we're served and what goes, and what are your thoughts on providing this fire protection services up here? Because we're running out of money, and there are challenges, and we will have a fire up here, so.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay. Great question. So basically got two options, and we're studying both of them right now. The first is that right now we have a county fire department, but basically we just contract with CAL FIRE to do that job. And in the summer, CAL FIRE can move their units to the point of greatest need in the state. So if there's a big fire up in the Sierras, we don't have all that much protection down here. So we need to move from what's called an Amador agreement, which is basically what lets them do that, and just where CAL FIRE really just is on during the fire season, and county fire, technically, we pay for the off-season, to a full-time agreement. So we have more regular folks here that are not going to get pulled away in state emergencies. The other option would be to actually grow the different fire districts, and so that they ultimately encompass the different areas of CSA 48. For example, I was talking to the folks at Central Fire just earlier today, and they could potentially take the area all the way up to the summit, since they already come a good way up Soquel San Jose Road. Similarly, Watsonville Fire Department could take the southern part of the mountains. And Santa Cruz, City of Santa Cruz could potentially take the north coast, although they're facing their own budgetary issues and also potentially looking at a merger. So those are the two options. We don't know for sure which one is best. It does ultimately come down to the money and making sure that we fund fire sufficiently.
Yeah, so the question I will ask is, what are your thoughts as the supervisor, right? And then, Lani, I'm going to ask you the same question, is on providing this to us. Do you think it's important, or it's like, hey, get it to a fire district and I'm done?
I think it's absolutely essential, right? I mean, as a rural resident, the two main services you depend on are fire and roads. I mean, and of course pushing on PG&E and the communication providers to make sure they're doing their job.
Lani?
Yeah, would you repeat the exact question?
Yep. So we are in CSA 48 and served by county fire and a volunteer fire company. So how familiar are you with the subject of fire protection up here? And what are your thoughts on providing these services to us, ongoing services to us?
Absolutely. So the fire services are critical up here, and I liken this area to Lahaina. If we ever have a real firestorm that starts in anywhere of our mountains, it really could go all the way down to the flatlands. I love that term. But one thing that I thought about very early on that's really important is that we partner with Santa Clara, San Mateo, Monterey, that we have really a partnership again and very collaborative, and we start talking across borders. Fire doesn't know borders, so it's really critical that we start to talk to, and I've already talked to some of our supervisors in Santa Clara and other areas, so that's really critical. Also, I know that Central Fire and Art Fire is looking at doing a more umbrella. There's the potential of growing that umbrella of fire service under one umbrella. I can't give you a plus or minus about that yet personally. I really need to dig into that more. But in regards to money, I think this is critical. And there is a lot of money. There's a lot of disaster preparedness grants available. I just looked on our website the other day, and I can't give you a lot of names, but the money is available, especially because we are a high fire disaster potential area. So there's a lot more money available for us now, and I will really be a champion to get that money for our areas, especially in these rural areas that are of high fire risk. And as well, we have preventative maintenance, and I talked about preventing the actual ignition of fire as being critical, and having PG&E as one of the major igniters. We need to prevent that. We also need to invest in shady fuel break type of programs that we're preventing the spread of fire to the best of our ability. So we have a lot of potential to improve, and that's very important to me to support that up in this area.
Thank you. Okay. Manu, you.
10 seconds. First of all, at the Mountain Night Out, we brought the Santa Clara Fire Department up here with all the folks from the Santa Cruz side as well, because we absolutely are coordinating, and our emergency operations centers are figuring out how we're going to co-respond to a disaster. And second of all, we have won some of these major grants to build things like the Summit Shaded Fuel Break, and now we just won the funds to do SoCal San Jose Shaded Fuel Break. So this is exactly what's currently happening.
Yes, thank you. A question here, and I'm going to elaborate on this question. Frontier Internet on Old Santa Cruz Highway and AT&T on Highway 17 don't have enough power backup for service in outages. And I will add Comcast, and I will add also our Verizon. And I know the county had told them that they have to up their power, but with the power outage since Sunday for all of us, we had no Comcast, no internet at all. So what is your thoughts about that? Manu, you can go first.
Okay, thank you. So after all the power outages last year, one of the first things, hearing what a problem this was, that I did was make sure that the county was not standing in the way. And I worked with our planning department to make sure that the various communications providers had all the permits they needed to move forward and install those batteries. At this point, we needed some enforcement, clearly, because they should be installing those batteries as fast as possible. It's state law that they provide 72-hour backup. And so I think the best way forward at this point is for you all to let me know if you lost internet, and we'll prepare some letters, write them to the CPUC and say, this address, this address, this address, this service provider, they're in violation of state law, and you need to take some enforcement action against them.
This is where I would say this partnership with the San Lorenzo Valley Women and the women's group up here would be really, really instrumental in moving this forward. You get a lot of strong women together, and we can really move things fast. Not having those backups is life-threatening. You get somebody that has a heart attack or a stroke, you've got a fire, you've got to have emergency services on the spot. And so this is a life-threatening, and the people's lives are in the hands of these utilities that are not doing what they need to be doing. So again, it's critical. Let's partner. Let's make it happen. I'm not going to put it off on someone else. I am with you. I will make it happen. I'll work with you side by side and bring you together with our other women's club to make that happen.
Thank you.
All right, there's a bunch of questions that were submitted around the same thing, so I'm going to take one of the topics. Okay, so Lani, I'm going to start with you on this question, just because Manu has heard this enough times in the last 3 years. I'd love to get your answer, and then Manu will get yours. So it starts with, there are fewer voters up here, so maybe our concerns are not as important as those of the people living down the hill. yet lots of tax money goes down the hill from up here. How much of it comes up, well, let's not worry about how much comes up. How will you bring more up here, especially for mountain roads? And that's the big question, right? For mountain roads, we need more money up here, we need them fixed. Lots of people feel like property taxes are being paid, money goes down, we look at our property tax bill, library services, nothing against library services, but, street lights, sidewalks. So, we don't have those up here. But the money goes down, it's not coming up here, we want mountain roads fixed. How do we get more money up here?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of roads that people in the flatlands use, right? Old San Jose Road. So it's really important to keep those up. But as well, you have roads like Redwood Lodge Road, and that's a real important road as an escape route out to Highway 1 and in different directions. So not only is the upkeep of the roads important for day-to-day use, but if you have emergencies, people need to have access to those roads very easily. As far as getting the money, I actually have endorsed Measure K, and I would actually urge the question, is the incumbent choosing to endorse Measure K? I know they voted on it, but now have backed off in terms of endorsing it. And I would actually urge us to, as a supervisor, I would actually put a larger percentage of Measure K, because it could be, if we allot a larger percentage of Measure K, which is the upcoming sales tax measure, which doesn't tax food, it doesn't tax diapers, it doesn't tax basics of living. It will actually primarily hit our visitors that come, and that we could have a steady stream of income that is for our roads. And I really would propose that we look at that and vote on that. It's going to be in March. The other thing, I just want to, imagine, because I'm not coming after the incumbent has brought up this idea of changing the property tax allocation, and I really urge not only caution, but there's a lot of misinformation around that. We actually get 100% of our property taxes in this community that go to our county, 100% of the property taxes that you pay. So I think the way that we're going to address more money for roads would be things like making sure that the state of California pays for the Highway 1 and that it's not coming out of our pockets. Right? We can pay for our roads, and the state needs to pay for the state roads. Like I said, there's also more disaster preparedness funds available, and that can also help us with the roads. And so that I would go after more money from grants and things that we can do one-time fix. And once we can improve those roads, then the money from Measure K and matching funds, if we put in a percentage, then we can apply for grants for bringing in more money to leverage the money that we are actually pulling out of our pockets. And so I really advocate for being strategic on how we use our monies to advocate and leverage and bring in more funds.
Thank you.
So actually, I'm going to go back on that one. So, and again, Lani, this is a question we've heard up here, I've heard at least 15 years. It's not about extra taxes. Measure K is an extra tax. I mean, that's great, and more money come in. But folks are like, we pay a lot in property taxes today. We paid them for the last 15 years. The money goes in there, it goes to the general fund, is spent on different things, doesn't come up here for roads. So how do we get more of that? Not extra money for Measure K, love that idea, but existing, we pay a lot there. How do we get more of that up here?
Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard the statistic of there being 600 miles of roads in the county. And I think a lot of it is what I call triage. I'm a first responder, wilderness first responder. And when you look at a road falling apart, you really have to triage. And I guess what I would say is a supervisor representing you is that I would look at the percentage that you pay and really triage what needs to be taken care of first in this part of the area. I think that's really important.
Manu?
I've been thinking about this question a lot in the last couple of days as this storm came through, as we saw issues even with parks maintenance, where, in a park down in the flatlands, as you say up here, some large trees came down and hit homes. And we had done quite a bit of maintenance work, but clearly we need to have done even more. And of course, the issues that I hear all the time from my constituents, all over, up here, down there, a lot of them come back to roads. And so I actually think that we need to reprioritize the county budget to spend more on infrastructure and less on social services. And it pains me to say that, because obviously a lot of people depend on our social services, but I think more people just use the infrastructure every day. And I think that that's ultimately what taxpayers need and want. Then we do need to go after this property tax issue, because while you write a fat property tax check to the county, we only keep 13% of that. And it's true that the money all stays local. This is kind of a state shell game, though. So 57% of our property taxes fund schools, but then that means that the state funds our schools less. So essentially, we're being deprived of state money. It also really disproportionately, the state really disproportionately funds schools within our own county. Some schools get $600 per student per year, some get $7,000 per student per year. And Loma, not technically within Santa Cruz County, in our County Office of Education, but as a basic aid district, probably better called a basically no aid district, because they get basically no aid from the state. So you guys are actually getting screwed on both sides, right? I mean, you're not getting the money from the state to pay for the school, and you're not getting enough money for the roads. So we have to fix both those issues, and it involves both reprioritizing how we spend the money locally with the county general fund, and it also means correcting some of these issues at the state.
I want to continue beyond the roads, because I think everybody here that's their main concern. They're terrible. Anyway, so I thought this was a good. Miller Hill Road is broken. Please drive home that way so you see what we have to live with. The tires will pop, and will the county pay to replace them? Now, we live off of Skyland Road, which is, you just bump your way up the road. So anyway, I know you can't do everything about the roads, but this is our main concern. Manu?
Yeah, and it's because we've had this tax formula in place for the last 45 years that gives our county only 13.5% versus other counties 20 or 25%. And it's really hard when you're trying to maintain 600 miles of road, it's true. And we've kind of, I've inherited 4 decades of neglect. It's true, it's terrible. We have to definitely address, I would say, prioritize the culverts, because the water wears away at the roads. And then, you can see in response to the 2023 storms, we really did take a different approach as far as fixing the roads. I mean, we used emergency permits and pretty much fixed as many of them as fast as we could. Now, I know if you're living near Redwood Lodge Road or over on Laurel or on Stetson, it's not soon enough. But we did fix 110 storm damage sites, and we pretty much spent every last dollar available to get those sites fixed as quickly as possible, using the fastest process possible. And we're going to issue a bond to cover those costs until we get reimbursed by FEMA, and start fixing some more. I think the other thing we do need to do is lobby the federal government to put more towards FEMA, because right now there was $25 billion worth of storm damage last year, and FEMA has a budget of $10 billion a year. So it's just getting fundamentally underfunded.
Lani?
Yeah, I just want to head back to that the property tax issue and Proposition 13. Again, 13.5% of our taxes go to unincorporated county, but 100% of that tax money comes to the county. And the question, and we've heard from Faris Sabah, we've heard from other leaders that are very, very concerned, because that would undermine our schools. And right now, our schools are being taxed. They're really in a state of red. They're really struggling right now, and the state is struggling. And what's happening in communities like Santa Clara is that they've gotten more money, but they're actually being asked to pay back money that they were overpaid. And it's kind of an apple-oranges thing when you compare ourselves to Santa Clara. They have a property tax income of $6 billion, and we take in about $78 million. I'm not sure if quite how accurate that is, but it's an order of magnitude difference. So you can't really compare and say, well, we only get $484 per student versus Santa Clara that gets $1,100 per student, because it's apples and oranges. We don't have an Apple, we don't have an Intel paying huge property tax money here. So, Miller Hill Road is broken. I think looking at a bond is a good way to address that. Also, ACA 2, which is going to be coming in the fall, I would suggest you vote on ACA 2, which will allow us to decrease the percentage that's required to vote on that bond, both for affordable housing and for our roads and infrastructure on the roads. So I think that's great. I also will really advocate, and again, I just want to get back to the fact that it's about collaborative partnerships. The incumbent put the property tax question on the consent agenda, which is like, oh, by the way, let's just do this thing. But we're talking about something that was baked in 1978 with Proposition 13 that takes every county in the entire state and every leader to work hand in hand to make that change. It's not going to happen overnight. It may not even happen in 10 years. It's a huge lift. So I think of it more of as a performative type of thing to say, hey, I'm going to do this thing for you. And everyone's like, oh, this is cool, more money's coming in. But it's actually not really going to be realized in any time soon. So I really want to do things that are going to bring in money more quickly. And I think a bond, and I think collaborating with our legislators to work on FEMA to bring that money in more quickly is important.
Okay. So the next question will actually get to the follow-up here. So the question was about apportionment reform, which I think is what we're talking about. That
What did you say?
the apportionment.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, apportionment reform. I think I got that right. Everyone's in favor of getting more funding for the county. But, so this, I'm going to say it in that tax reform, two parts. One part is, what are the chances of that actually happening in our lifetime? So I'd love to get your view on that. And the second one is, what would you actually cut? Because again, at the end of the day, the money all comes back, and it goes to schools, local school districts, cities, libraries. So if you're going to give more to the roads, you're going to cut to the schools. Now, I believe what I've heard is, Manu, you're saying cut it from the schools because we'll get more money, but you got to cut from somewhere. I mean, 100% comes here. You want to give more here, you got to take it from somewhere. So, Lani, love to get your answer on chance of it getting done, and then, where would you cut? And then Manu will come back to you with more elaboration. So.
I'm first? Yeah, so thank you. I think you really described the pie, right? So the schools get the biggest chunk. Our 4% goes towards the cities, so they divvy up 4% amongst 4 cities. 13.5 goes to unincorporated. Our fire district, so they get only 0.5%, and I would say actually the fire district needs more for good reason. We just talked about our fire safety. So I say, do we want to cut for fire? And those are the folks that are going to get cut, the schools and the fire districts. Then we also have water districts, sewer district, and other small districts like that. What are the chances of it happening in our lifetime? Well, when I sat down with Mark Pimentel, who runs our budget with the county, he runs the entire budget with the county, his statement was, not in my lifetime. When I talked to other officials throughout the state, including other supervisors in Santa Clara, they said the same thing, not in my lifetime. So that's from other people. It's, again, I think that the route that we have to go to talk about where we're going to get more money isn't stealing from other parts of the pie that are already distributed in our county. It's really getting our legislators to work on our behalf, and that our leadership is working harder to bring more money in. And we have a lot of that with the disaster preparedness money that's coming around.
Okay, so yeah, the fundamental misunderstanding is that in my opponent's answer, is that we're going to take money away from the schools. No, first of all, yes, these are big problems that have been with us for a long time, and they're not going to change quickly. But if we never start trying, then they're definitely never going to change, as opposed to someday changing. And we radically need to reform the way we fund our schools in this state as well. Because as I mentioned, the state funding for schools is very uneven. The statistics I mentioned were within our own county, a 10x difference, $600 per student for some, $6,000, $7,000 for others. It's just not fair. And I mean, I've talked with members of school boards that are like, we can't make this work either. The way the state's far too restrictive. They recently implemented this new funding formula, but it's not working well. So I think these are big questions that may even require a statewide initiative. Heck, that's how Prop 13 got put into place the first time. It's not impossible. And when I've looked at it, the majority of counties, the majority of the population in the state is actually living in counties that are getting less than their fair share, and so I think that there is actually a pathway to getting it done. I guess a couple other things. I mean, my opponent seems to fundamentally misunderstand state finance in a couple things. I mean, first of all, she said she would bond local money to fix our roads, and yes, we could absolutely do that, but we would need the source of funding to cover the payments on the bond. And the way we do that is we carve out more of our general fund and say we're going to do this for the next 25 years, and that's how we're going to pay for this bond. The state does pay for the highway. Also, the state will not give us a whole bunch of matching funds for local roads. They will for state highways, and in fact, the highway project, we put in about 20%, and the state put in the other 80%. So that is happening now. Yeah, have to elaborate further.
Thank you. Go ahead. Oh, you
You're
have
the
that
next
one?
question.
Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, okay, I'll ask you both. What are your priorities going to be as our supervisor, and how do they relate to all of us mountain residents? So, okay, Lani, you want to go first?
Absolutely. I just want to talk about, so I'm going to list at the very top. Affordable housing, I know that's less of an issue up here, is a huge issue across the county and state and throughout the country. So I think really addressing affordable housing, bringing more housing, making it quicker to build and provide more infill closer to our transit areas. And I'm sorry, was your question more general across the county or more here?
Priorities, and then for mountain residents.
Okay.
And when you did mention building more, dealing with Santa Cruz County Planning Department,
Absolutely.
I mean, you might as well commit seppuku, you know.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And I just have to say that, you know, the incumbent really ran on, I'm going to make it faster, easier, you know, for everybody to get their houses through, and ran during CZU, and yet CZU, there's still only 60 homes that have been built of the almost 1,000 that have lost. So I'm not sure how effective we've been in the current administration, just to be honest. But I think that's something that we can do more for. We can actually change zoning. So for example, churches, there's AB4 with the state that talks about changing church land and rezoning so that churches can build more homes on their land. That we can look at private partnerships, private-public partnerships, and a number of things. I want to go on to the other two things as well, because it deals with other things. Environment, climate, those I think deal directly with roads and transportation, so they're all connected together. So creating more alternatives to get out of the car, as well as dealing with improving the roads up in the areas where we really need to focus on improving. And then the other thing I call is connected communities. It's kind of an overarching umbrella. And what connected communities really is about helping us really be conscious of our senior community and our youth and child education and our safety on the streets. For example, I've had so many seniors and our school board members that have come to me and said, they've been left behind with the incumbent. The incumbent, for example, this very complex formula of funding for schools, the incumbent was invited to a meeting to actually learn about that, and I just got a call yesterday actually from a board member, and they're like, well, he walked in and he walked out. He didn't actually learn how this complex formula of funding goes for the school, and they were really upset about that. So I think that's been kind of a consistent thing I've heard from teachers and from our school board members, that there's less activity around that. Also, home insurance is really huge up here for our fire-prone areas. I heard last week that a gentleman said it's going to cost him $14,000 to do home insurance, that people are going to get bankrupted. They can't afford that. So, and here's something that's relevant to us right here. And I heard the incumbent say, go talk to Ricardo Loera, your insurance guy. So he's not willing to help advocate for you here about fire insurance, but he wants to go change the entire state in 1978, Proposition 13, that no one's been able to do for 45 years. I just want to say, let's prioritize. Let's try to work together on changing the things that we can work together and change first. Thank
So
you.
Manu, because you have been supervisor and everything, your priorities are what in relating to us up here?
Yeah, certainly. So reforming our planning department is and remains one of my top goals. It's not like I haven't been doing anything since taking office. We got completely new leadership in there. We fired the ineffective former planning director and her assistant planning director. In a nice way. But we did get new leadership in. We combined the Department of Planning and Public Works to try to, and created a unified permit center so that there's a single point of accountability for approving permits and that you can go in and talk to everyone involved in issuing your permit. We did a bunch of little stuff like create a pre-approved ADU plans, slash fees for ADUs of 750 square feet or less, legalize tiny homes. And then most recently, I created a third-party plan check program, which basically means you can hire your own plan checker and don't have to wait in line at the planning department in order to, for us to review your plans. And in doing that, I learned a lot about what we're actually required to do when issuing permits. And right now, our county planners are going through and checking every single line of code, county code and state code, and you know, if it's gray, they'll send it back to you. It adds another 2 months to the process. I heard about a guy trying to get a demolition permit just to demolish his house and put in a prefab house. It took him over a year just to get the demolition permit. And so still dealing with 60, 70% very entrenched staff that are hostile to the public. It's true. So we need to, what I'm going to do in a second term is take that kind of mentality from the third-party plan check program and make it apply to the whole department and say, when people come in for a permit, we're going to check that they have an architect, structural engineer, you know, maybe they've done their soils report, but then we're going to give them a permit. We're going to say, great, your project team is ultimately liable. We're going to send a building inspector out to make sure the building is built correctly, and if there's mistakes, it'll be costly for you to fix. But we don't need to spend all this time in review. We need to get permits issued, and we need to get housing built. So that's the main thing that I will. And, you know, it's like taking out a pampas grass. You know, you hack at it, you get around the edges. I think I'm finally close to the taproot on this one. I just need a little bit more time. The second thing really is about how we prioritize our spending in this community. You know, we can win state and federal grants for a lot of things, and we've done that. I've helped to bring over $148 million for our bus system. But you have to understand what streams can be used for what. My opponent fundamentally doesn't. She criticized an earlier decision that when I helped win more money for county roads. Yes, it meant that Metro got less in that round of gas tax funding allocation, but we knew how to go get $148 million elsewhere for Metro. County roads doesn't have those kinds of alternative sources. That's why we need to really prioritize it in our budget. And I think we've got a great opportunity going forward, particularly with the two other races going on in District 5 and District 2, to really form a mountain caucus, if you will, and make sure that we reprioritize local funding. And yes, it's not going to be easy, changing state formulas, but I am committed to doing it. And I've got appointed to CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, so I can help start building a coalition statewide to get that done as well.
All right, thank you. So it's kind of interesting. I got two comments given, and they go in line with my next question that I was going to ask. So the comment I'm going to make is just a reminder to both of you, this is not a debate. Going at each other is not good. We are a very collaborative community up here. You represent us, you will find that we're hard. We will push you, we will want you to do things, but we don't like going at each other. So please don't do that. You're not winning any fans. I really had to give it to me. And then the question I have, which is kind of along those lines, and Manu, I'll ask that to you first, and then Lani next. It takes working with others to make anything happen, right? Board of Supervisors, you need 3 votes, anything. So how do you plan to, well, for you it's not plan, it's Manu, how do you work across boundaries such as different city and county government, state government, regional agencies to represent our mountain communities' needs, i.e. roads, wildfire prevention, homeowners insurance, et cetera. So Manu, for you it is, how do you do this? And then Lani, how would you plan to do it? So Manu first.
Yeah, do it all the time. As you said, it's basically necessary to get anything done. You have to be collaborative. And so particularly I've worked a lot with Supervisor McPherson's office on the county road issue. We collaborated, if you will, to make sure that county roads got their fair share of the gas taxes, and have also collaborated with, really each one of my fellow supervisors on various issues. Supervisor Friend, who has been probably our most active representative on state issues, we collaborated on making sure we passed that resolution saying the state property tax formula needed to change. So it's just not just a harebrained idea by one supervisor. It is passed as a resolution by the entire board, including some very experienced other supervisors. And then, on state issues, whether it's the flight path issue, for example, I met with Congressman Panetta numerous times on that, and really identified that the one thing we have to do is really make sure that this FAIR Act, basically the Reauthorization Act to fund the FAA, includes language that says they're going to take into account the environmental impact of changes to things like flight paths on the communities that are impacted. Right now they don't have to pay any attention, and that's a problem. Unfortunately, Congress is kind of a mess right now. And have collaborated on lots of statewide issues in general. But like I said, including writing letters to our and working with our representatives, even just to get a state or to get a geologic survey done for the area, which would make it faster to build. So, yeah, lots of. It takes collaboration to get anything done. So.
Thank you. We have time for more questions, so if somebody would like to write them out and bring them up to us, we would like that.
Great. So the question is how? How do I work together to collaborate to get things done? And I think that, again, kind of led to this very early on, which is I'm a roll up my sleeves and get boots on the ground kind of leader. And it often means, and I have really good relationships with actually a couple of the county supervisors currently in Santa Cruz, as well as supervisors in Santa Clara that I've had a chance to talk to. I'm a state delegate, and so I have communications with our legislators as well, John Lair, Don Addis, Gail Pellerin. And those relationships take part of bringing up and having communications about things that are important for our constituents. One of the things that I did very early on, I heard that Monica Martinez was running in San Lorenzo Valley. Well, she's for District 5, which is Scotts Valley, San Lorenzo Valley. And I do a lot of work with the San Lorenzo Valley Women's Club of San Lorenzo Valley. And I said to Monica, Monica, your area has been the stepchild of Santa Cruz County for the entire, for decades. They, like you, get very little money and they get forgotten all the time. And I said, Monica, it's really important to me to help support San Lorenzo Valley in the things that you need for your community as you start to step up as supervisor. So I'm already thinking ahead about how I can support other supervisors and collaborate with other people to get things done. And that's the same thing about this area up here. I reached out, like I said, to supervisors in Santa Clara, and I said, hey, you are just across the border from us. It's really important. And I reached out to the fire department down in Los Gatos, and I said, it's really important that we collaborate. So I'm just a collaborator, and I'm listen. And I think that's a real key thing that I've heard a lot of people say, is that they really want a supervisor who they feel listens to what they need. That they feel listened, and there's a difference between just listening and feeling listened. That's active listening. And so I've heard a lot of people say that they feel that, and I collaborate with the Climate Alliance, the Sierra Club. I'm an executive committee member. And so bringing all these pieces of information, people will call me up and say, do you know this thing is going on? You got to join us and get together on it and help, because they know that I've been very effective. I write a lot of letters, and I do a lot of advocacy for our community and for across the state, especially around CPUC and PG&E stuff. It's very frustrating.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right, I got a new question. And what are your specific plans or strategies for addressing the insurance crisis that is affecting our community? We did touch on that before, but can you elaborate on it? Monica, you want to go first?
Well, obviously advocacy at the state level to have, I think, really building in more acknowledgement in insurance rates of the work that people do to improve the fire safety of their homes. So making sure that defensible space counts as a reduction in your fire insurance, and that the quality of local roads and accessibility as well. And so then I can turn around and make sure that those things are being met at the local level between, like I said, funding fire-wise communities, funding our resource conservation district, and helping ensure that people are able to create that defensible space, and that we're also doing it along all of our major roadways. And then in terms of ensuring that the roads are actually passable and easy to get out and defend your home. I think it's pretty, and of course, working with PG&E to improve fire safety there as well. I would disagree that it's not useless to underground lines, and we have a big project on SoCal San Jose Road where we're moving forward with doing just that, and we can continue to improve other parts of the system as well.
Lani?
And I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay. Let's see, I gotta find it.
It was insurance, right? We're talking about insurance.
It's about insurance.
Okay, great.
What's your specific ideas or plans to help us with the insurance crisis?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard that someone's having to pay $14,000 for insurance, I mean, I can't even imagine having to do that. And then there's the not fair plan. You've heard of the fair plan, right? It's really the not fair plan. So the power is in the numbers, and I alluded to this earlier about changing insurance. And I really think that this is where we need to form a coalition of people, San Lorenzo Valley women, the women up here, all the people up here, and then get our legislators, and we work and partner together. So your county supervisor is your voice, but really the power behind that voice is all of your voices together. And so having a leader that brings us all together and then has these really important conversations with the legislators to say, look, beyond, yes, certainly you can fireproof, harden your home, we can improve the roads and do all that stuff, but I can guarantee you, if we don't push them, those fire insurance rates are going to remain very high. And so we really need to work at all levels to push them to say, look, you've basically made huge amounts of money off of us for decades. Now you need to compromise and protect the people up here and maybe not make such big return on your income. You don't have to make, I don't know actually what they make, 20, 50, 30% return on their income, whatever it is, it needs to be balanced. And we need to say, look, you need to take care of our people. You've already made a lot of money. You need to take care of our people. So working in partnership, there's United Policyholders. You may have heard of them as well. They also help advocate. Working with Ricardo Lara is a key thing to do, but I think it's your leaders advocating with Ricardo Lara, with you behind them on that would be my tactic.
Can I just address one thing there? I mean, part of the issue is that we actually already have some pretty restrictive requirements in place through state propositions about how much fire insurance and others can go up. And when met with that, insurance companies are just not insuring in our community. And so it's not, it's as beautiful a vision as it is that we're going to get together and we're going to tell these corporations they need to be responsible. In fact, we already did that by passing the proposition. And so we really need to look at, okay, well, what is a fair increase? How can we really calculate the fact that when homeowners are doing their part to reduce risk? That's the substantive conversation we need to have, because just saying, sorry, you can't raise rates, well, we see what happens there. We just don't get insurance.
All right. I've got a few questions, but there's one I guess I got to ask because the person who asked it is important to me. How do we get more library services, such as book drop or annex or library, to our area?
Okay, I think we need a mobile library. I know that we already do, but let's get the mobile library up here more frequently. It was excellent, excellent. And I just want to say, I'd really like to hear the supervisor commit that he's going to endorse Measure K, because I think that's going to really help make that more accessible, to bring those services up here. And let's not mess with that property tax thing, because again, the libraries really see a percentage of that. So reading is essential, and I will do whatever I can to support keeping our kids reading and actually improve that.
Right, Manu?
Yeah, I mean, the mobile library is great. Is there a specific space up here that we could turn into some kind of, library facility? I would love to work with you guys on that, and see then how we could, help bring some funds to the situation to build it out and make it a great place for the community.
I
Cool.
agree with that.
Right? You have a question? Or you want me to go again?
Oh, okay, this is kind of an interesting one. How does a bus lane on Highway 1 between 41st and Soquel help when I've never seen a bus on that stretch of Highway 1? How will this help relieve the congestion?
I can take that. Well, we're making the bus free.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and guess what? It works. We did this already for youth. Students age, K through 12 can get on the bus just showing their student ID. We saw a 400% increase in student ridership. So when bus becomes free for everyone later this year, we expect around September, we do think we'll see a pretty significant increase in ridership. And then, I do think we need, there have to be incentives to riding, not just the cost, but also that you can get to your destination quickly. So we are increasing the frequency of all the routes across town to come every 15 minutes, so there's less wait times. And then really making sure that the bus can get through traffic effectively. So we're doing that with transit signal priority on a lot of the lights throughout town, which means that there's a transponder on the bus, transponder on the light, and the light knows when the bus arrives and it turns green, gets you through. And then on the highway, making this bus on shoulder facility will mean that the bus can run without running into traffic. And ultimately, we know that a lot of the time, the reason there's so many people taking Soquel San Jose Road and flying down Summit is because the highway's backed up. So we absolutely do need to improve the highway. And getting people on the bus is one way to help relieve some of the traffic as well.
As founder of Equity Transit, I am 100% supporting of robust public transportation. As I mentioned earlier, I helped be a part of that movement with Metro. I work with Youth for Climate Justice. These are groups of youth that I connected them to the general manager they were working on state bus ride free for transportation across the state, and then brought them with Michael Tree to help bring in that same kind of program here. And I'm really grateful that the incumbent actually voted yes on that as a board member, so that's great. But I just want to say that the Caltrans report, if you have a chance to read the Caltrans report on that specific segment, was very clear. It showed that adding that as a bus on shoulder basically wouldn't improve traffic whatsoever. But what will improve traffic is getting more people out of cars and adding passenger rail. Even though you may not have direct access to passenger rail from here, you've got over 50% of the community within a very short distance of the rail. And so folks that can commute on rail, get them out of their cars. Those that can commute in buses, get them out of their cars. That will actually reduce traffic. So getting people to have alternatives is really important. And then for you folks up here, I've heard plenty of people say there used to be a bus up here. So how the prioritization works is we want to get those key lanes, those key corridors working really well, get a lot of people using those key corridors of bus, and then we can start to think about expanding service, because the survey looked at what was more important to the community. It was more important to have first those frequent service along primary corridors, and then later on, as we start to get more ridership, we can start to expand that service. I'm not sure if I addressed the full question there.
I would just ask a question of myself, because the Highway 17 bus is very, very well ridden, but they refuse to stop at the summit. They stop in Scotts Valley, but they won't stop at the summit for us. Is there any way that could be changed?
That's an excellent suggestion. And I think, yeah, we're actually doing the Reimagine Metro Phase 2 here in the next month or so, I could definitely propose adding a stop at the summit.
Okay, so this one, our school is a basic aid district. I'm going to just shorten the question here, which I guess, Manu, you said was a no-aid district. So the question is, how does that affect the quality of our schools, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, well, happy to answer the question. I mean, basic aid basically means that you get the most basic level of aid and really not a whole lot else, that property taxes primarily fund the school. And like I said, this comes back to the fact, the way that our property taxes are divided in this community. And we need reform not only for local governments, but for schools as well, because being a basic aid district right now has horrible consequences. I was talking to Superintendent Kevin Greer the other day and learned that basic aid districts don't get funding for the pre-K program, whereas others do. So it's like, it makes no sense. You're actually paying more for your school, but then you're getting less on these other programs. And so, yeah, we need urgently to address some of these statewide reforms, not only for county government, but for our schools as well.
Yeah, so basic aid areas, of course, have a higher amount of property taxes that they generate, and so then they don't get matching. And if you live in areas of Santa Clara where you have the Apples and the Intels paying into that property tax, then you've got a real gold mine. But there's a lot of us here suffering, including the Santa Cruz City schools and a lot of other schools suffering. So how do we ensure more money? Sorry, I had something go in my head and it just left. So I think being an advocate for our schools is really critical. I've actually taught schools as well, and ensuring that the efforts go to our community schools and that we raise more money is really important. Ensuring that we don't set ourselves up for failure in ways that's going to withdraw money from our schools is really important. And I did have something in my head. It went out. Yeah, I'm just about there, I have to say. Give me a moment. It'll pop up in about 5 minutes, I'm sure.
All right, let me move on to another question on that. We'll come back to it if it comes to you. One of the biggest challenges is climate change, but climate change is a global challenge. What can the Board of Supervisors in Santa Cruz do about climate change? What are your thoughts on that? Which one prefers to go first? You want to go?
Sure.
Go for it.
So, I mean, as far as addressing the global challenge, I mean, we're seeing firsthand the costs of climate change show up, right? I mean, it is hugely impacting our county budget. And so we need to start making sure that the appropriate cost of carbon is being paid, right? We need to charge more for, whether it's goods imported from China or, yes, a gallon of gas. And we need to tax carbon across the board. Now, what we do with it is important to understand, because we should take all of that money that's collected and then divide it up and give it back to everyone. I don't want a bunch of expensive government programs in place. I want people to have money in their pocket to make the climate adaptations that they need, whether that's buying solar panels or hardening your home or whatever else. And studies show that if we do this, that actually the average person will end up having more money than they pay out. They'll still be incentivized to move away from expensive carbon-emitting things and towards others, but the fact of the matter is, wealthy people flying around in private jets are burning way more carbon, and so they would pay more into the system and everyone else would get out more. So I've advocated for that at the state level because, heck, as the fourth largest economy in the world, California could make a huge difference if we just passed that. That's what our state legislators should be focused on. Locally, obviously, I think we should, as I've said, spend more money on infrastructure. We have to get ahead of this. And then, adaptation. No one should be forced to move out of their home, whether that, or probably even forced from, or prevented from rebuilding, right? But in some cases, I was talking to a woman the other day who lives up near Boulder Creek, and she's getting to be 70 years old. Her house was destroyed in the CZU fire. Then 2 trees fell across where exactly she was planning on rebuilding. She was staying with a friend. The river was rising. She's like, oh my God, I just can't do this rural lifestyle anymore. I do think we need a transfer of development rights opportunity where if you want to rebuild somewhere safer, you can do that. And you can put a conservation easement on your property and still preserve the value and go somewhere else. So those are a few things that I think we could do.
Lani?
Thank you. Yeah, there's some really critical things we can do right away that would actually impact very fast. And I think one of the critical things is called pulling the lever, and that's shifting methane. Methane is 80 times more destructive to our environment than CO2. So as greenhouse gases go, methane is 80 times more destructive. So we could change that very quickly, and one is through electrification. So moving in the direction of electrifying new homes that are built. And I'm not saying, I personally, I think it's a lot harder to go retrofit older homes, but I think looking at new homes, as we're starting to build, we look at electrification and get away from methane production gases, natural gas and things such as that. Transportation in our county produces 70% of the greenhouse gases. So again, getting back to those alternatives to being in our car is going to be really critical. And I know for being in the mountains, that's a little bit harder, but for those folks on the flats, getting the bus system ramped up, getting rail, getting bikeable, walkable, safe, 15 minutes communities where, like in the old days in our country, in city across city, you would have a store, a little corner store, and a cafe, and a market, all within walking distance of your house. Those structures are very smart, and we need to start looking to move in that direction. So zoning in every neighborhood that, someone moves out and they're like, oh, I want to buy that house and turn it into a little corner market. It's really great. You know how nice it is to have the Summit Market up here, right? It's the same thing in every community. And that way you don't have to get into your car, turn on the ignition, and fuel, use a gallon or two of fuel to just go get a dozen eggs. You can just walk to the market. I was in San Francisco and got to do that when I was a little kid. I got to be the go run and get the milk and eggs for grandma and auntie. The other thing I want to talk about, which is a little more touchy with older folks, but our beef and cattle industry produces more than twice the amount of methane than all of the oil wells in the United States and Northern America. And I have the data for you. What that means to me is if people just cut out a couple hamburgers and cheese and dairy out of their diets, it literally could make a huge difference. Now, I love hamburgers, I love cheese, I love all that stuff. I'm not saying go vegan. I'm just saying if we just cut out a little bit from our diets, it could have a tremendous effect. And one of the things as supervisor that I can do that I would really support is, so I used to teach college nutrition, and I used to teach, I'm a biochemical endocrinologist by background, so I can tell you a lot of nerdy things about health. But when you look at schools in India, in Kerala, for example, their base of protein is lentils, and it's so healthy. And so kids that, if you train your kids to eat hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, that's what they're going to love the rest of their life. But if you train them to eat really healthy, they'll really love good food. And so providing more healthy food for kids, because now schools have to provide meals for K through 8 or K through 12 for breakfast and for lunch. I just don't understand why we don't prioritize healthy food in our schools. That would be a big issue for me, a big push to have healthy food for our kids.
Thank you. We're running.
Thank you so much.
right.
Sorry about that.
We're running short.
We're almost out of time. So how about we do closing statements, each of you, and Lani, I think you went first to start, right? We're going to have you start this one as first, so Mani, you will get the last word. Okay, she got the first word, you will get the last word. So Lani, closing statement, a couple minutes.
I open first and I close first?
Yeah.
Okay.
That way he gets to close last. So you get the first word, you get the last word.
Okay, great, thanks. Thanks again, everyone, for showing up here tonight. This is super important. My style of leadership really centers around growing solutions together with you, and I think those of you who've worked with me know that. I'm the kind of leader that works to connect people and organizations together. An example of that is the SLV Women's Club, and I'd love to connect you with those folks. I think you guys could get a lot done together. It means we really are more empowered when we work together and working with our legislators and our representatives on these very important rural issues. Having those key and really good relationships with our legislators is key. Rather than calling out our legislators before we've actually done our homework, my style is to respectfully partner with them. We can achieve better, faster outcomes together, bring in more money, and move behemoths like PG&E, the CPUC, and these insurance companies to better serve us. We must keep our promises, and when the state grants us multi-million-dollar grants that we've asked for, we need to follow through with doing what we've promised that we would do. And that hasn't been happening lately in the county. Otherwise, the influx of money will dry up if we don't do that. I will roll up my sleeves and my boots are on the ground when it comes to the work I do. This is what I did when I was president of the Road Association when I lived in Boulder Creek, California. I managed that, and I was able to bring pretty much 100% participation on my road. People really had fun, and I bring yummy treats. Our rural communities deserve more attention, and I will bring respectful leadership to the role of supervisor, collaborating with workers and state leaders alike, and volunteers that serve on our commissions and work groups. I hope to have the honor of your vote. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Manu.
Thank you. Well, we're really at a critical shift right now on the Board of Supervisors, given that there's 3 seats up. And really, as I've already mentioned, all 3 of those seats are the ones that have the largest rural constituencies. In fact, the other 2 that are not up have, less than 10% of their constituencies, even in the unincorporated area, let alone the mountain area. So it's really District 1, District 2, and District 5. And you could have a completely brand new, no one of those supervisors knows quite what they're doing, or you could have reelect me as a strong leader who understands, certainly has cut my teeth on some of these issues, and understands what we need to do going forward and can help explain that to the other supervisors that represent rural areas as well. And I think we could actually have a very strong mountain caucus, if you will, going forward. And the opportunity is, if I'm reelected in March, that I can start doing things that then we can get District 2 and District 5 to have to talk about during their elections as well and commit to, including shifting money towards roads and addressing the inequities in our statewide property tax system that have led us to this point as well. It is going to take both. So I offer you that, as well as, heck, let's just make it easier for you to build an ADU for your kids or to have a rental or anything else. And I think that fundamentally my politics of, yes, being a little bit more independently minded politically, certainly collaborative, and you have to be collaborative to get anything done, but is going to help get those things done because, when you have too many masters, sometimes you don't know which one to serve. But I can bring very clear sense of understanding of what we need to get done next and make sure that this community's needs are met. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. We really appreciate you being here. Our whole mountain community is very interested in the 2 of you, and I gather you have your tables up there afterwards so people can go and ask you personal questions and get your brochures, etc. But anyway, let's give them a big hand.
And remember, March 5th, that's the vote.